We create a lot of content as influencers. Some of it is our own organic content that we create and conceptualize, and other times we take on sponsorships from brand partners. Sponsored content can be incredibly powerful for brands when done right. They could see an influx in sales, get a ton of new followers, or even attract the attention of major media outlets. But as a content creator, what is the right balance of organic and sponsored content? And when you do accept sponsored posts, how can you make it a little bit less jarring for your audience so you don't come off like a cheesy car salesman? I've been a digital content creator for over 10 years, so I've pretty much seen it all. And in today's video, I'm going to be answering those exact questions and also sharing my top 3 tips for when it comes to approaching sponsored content on your social media accounts. Let's get into it. First, I want to address the topic of what is the right balance of organic and sponsored content as an influencer. The right balance will ultimately be up to you and what's best for your account and your audience, but let's take a look at some real-world examples. If you think about a magazine, I have the knot here because my wedding is quickly approaching. You wouldn't read a magazine if it was just all ads, right? You read the magazine because of the content, and you expect there to be some ads as you flip through the pages. Also, you as a consumer might understand that for certain months, a magazine is going to have more ads than in other months. If you know anything about the magazine and publishing industry, that's where I originally started. You might know that the Vogue September issue has been compared to a phone book some years because of how many advertisements there are for fall fashion, right? That is a very prominent time for the fashion industry, and people really want to advertise for people who are doing back to school shopping, people who are looking for new fall pieces, and especially right ahead of that holiday season, where people are going to be spending more than they probably have in the first 6 months of the year. We can think about the same thing in the TV industry, right? If you're watching a show not on a streaming network, which might be pretty rare for you these days, but if you think about a typical 60-minute television show, maybe you're going to get 42 minutes of content and 18 minutes of commercials. So that's about 30% commercials compared to 70% content. We can definitely use something like that as a baseline metric. And then, of course, there are exceptions to that. If you think about the Super Bowl commercials are always a big talking point of that event, and there are going to be a lot of them. That's something you expect when you sit down to watch that game. So if we think about those 2 examples of magazines and television, the bottom line here is you should always be producing more organic content than sponsored content. However, understanding that that percentage might shift from season to season depending on when you're busiest is a key part of your influencer business. Next, I want to share my top 3 tips for approaching sponsored content so you don't have to feel like you're selling with a capital S every time you upload a sponsored post to your social media profiles. So the number 1 best tip that I can give you is to partner with brands that either are in a category that you talk about all the time, or even better yet, a brand that you have already organically used, loved, and mentioned to your audience. Now, I can totally understand that this wouldn't always be the case, but if you are a beauty influencer, you're probably not going to take on a brand partnership from a food company unless you branch out from beauty and become more of a lifestyle account. A collaboration should make sense on both sides of it, because if a company that you're not really that interested in wants to work with you, if you actually accept that brand partnership, you're not going to enjoy creating that content. And worse, the brand is going to be investing their money in something they may not see results in because that's not the audience that they should be marketing towards. So one thing that I recommend all content creators do, and you can even do it right after you watch this video, is just write down a list of top 10 brand partners that you would love to work with. If you're a fashion content creator, go take a look through your closet, see what your most shopped brands are. If you're a beauty content creator, go take a look at your vanity, see which brands you're loving and using. Really simple exercise, just write down 10 brands that you would really love to partner with, and think about those brands when a new collaboration offer comes in. Also, if you're interested in pitching brands that you already use and love, and you're like, oh my God, it would be so major if me and this brand got together and created a bomb piece of content, I talk all about my pitching strategy and tips that have helped me land 4-figure brand partnerships even as a micro influencer in my ebook Right on Pitch. So that is always linked down below in the description box if you're interested in checking it out. Let's move on and talk about tip number 2, which is to show your audience how this brand is presenting a solution to a problem that you've had. So I don't believe this is a paid example, but it's definitely a gifted example. If you guys follow TikTok content creator Alex Earl, I've mentioned her several times on this channel before. You may know that earlier this summer, she and a group of her girlfriends traveled to Positano. They booked what they thought was a luxury villa through booking.com that turned out to be a total scam, and so they were just stranded in Italy with nowhere to stay. Airbnb commented something on her posts like, okay, we got you, our people are calling right now, and they put her and her friends up in an Airbnb property that was vacant and was available for them because they saw that she was in distress. So right there, you can see the problem, stranded in Positano. The solution, Airbnb had many great options, and maybe if they had just booked with them to start with, they wouldn't have had this problem. Or let's take another example. Let's just say that you are a makeup content creator. I know I always use beauty examples, but that is the content that I create, so hopefully you guys don't mind, and I try to mix it up from time to time. But let's say that you're a makeup content creator and you've struggled with acne for forever. Well, maybe you found a skincare product that finally helps you treat your acne, and that has a lot of weight to it because your audience has probably seen your skincare journey, seen you struggle with acne. So if you finally find something that's a solution for that, that works for you, that might also work for people who follow you who could be going through the same thing, that is a much more powerful story to tell through a piece of sponsored content. And it's just a great way to tie in your organic content to then having this brand, again, solve that problem for you or help make your life easier somehow. So always be thinking about how a brand has taken you from point A to point B and how you can communicate that in a fun way to your audience. Which brings me to tip number 3, which is to, as much as possible, try to create sponsored content that still has the same spirit as your organic content. And by this, I mean, when working with a brand partner, you should be advocating as much as possible for your content style, your creative voice to shine through, even though it's technically a piece of sponsored content. In an ideal world, brands should hire content creators because of the content that they create that they can see works really well. So if a brand is trying to force a script on you or force you to do a sit-down talking video when what you really create is lifestyle blogs with voiceover, and you just know that that's not going to perform as well, it would be a disservice to not bring that up to the brand and not advocate for yourself and your content type. And this is why I think it's so important to discuss what the idea for a collaboration is before signing a contract, because you want to make sure you're creating something that still feels authentic to you and true to you. And most importantly, you want to do something that's going to get the brand results. The reason that a brand will hire a content creator to produce a piece of sponsored content is because they see what that creator is doing with their organic content, and they're hoping to replicate that success, replicate those results through a sponsored post. So if a brand is trying to get you to do something that you just don't want to do, you could say, X is not really something that I do on my page, but actually Y performs way better. And when you tell them that something performs way better, come prepared with screenshots. You can argue with someone's perspective as much as you want, but one thing you can't argue with is data. So come with the numbers on hand and be prepared to show brands, this is what is my most successful type of content, and here's why. And that will give them a stronger case to give you more free reign and you more creative control over a sponsored post. If you guys watched my recent vlog where I actually showed you the step-by-step process of filming a basically UGC style video for a brand partner, I actually saw in their brand brief, they wanted me to throw in any talking points based on my experience with the product. They wanted me to hit, of course, just the color range and things like that, things that I would want to tell someone anyway. But I was able to throw in my own perspective. And that video actually wasn't even for my page. That was just created for their social media accounts. So that meant even more, because that means that within what they want to do with that creative, they still valued my opinion. So finding the right brand partners, communicating that brand's value to your audience, and also retaining your creative control and your voice are all key to ensure that a sponsored post will be a successful post. And I also want to touch on audience education, because I think that is growing to be more and more important for influencers and for the creator economy as a whole. If you'd been creating content for a while and maybe recently started taking on sponsorships, I do think it's worth it to take a minute to explain to your audience why you're doing that, why you've started working with brands, because you taking the time to explain to your audience why you're doing what you're doing is so helpful to just spread the word about how influencer marketing works, because our world is becoming much more savvy about this industry, but there are still a lot of people who don't quite get how this whole world works. If you don't want to personally explain it to your audience, if you're not someone who shares the behind the scenes of your creator journey, feel free to direct them to my channel. Honestly, I have so many videos on here about, how to price yourself as an influencer, to my predictions for the creator economy, and so much more. So if someone really wants to understand what's going on, please do refer them back to my channel. I'm happy to take on that responsibility. But if you are willing to take a few minutes to just explain to your audience, what's your process for vetting brand partners? Like, when and why do you accept collaborations? I actually do think that goes a long way with them, especially if they've been there and supported you through all of your organic content and you want that same support for when you go to create that sponsored content. Here's one line that you have permission to steal directly from me, and I'm going to read it word for word because I want to make sure I get it right. Occasionally, I'll take on sponsorships for my channel or my page that give me the financial backing and capability to continue to create the organic content that I love producing that I know you all enjoy. And if you want, you can even refer back to some of the real-world examples we discussed at the beginning of this video. Sometimes when you watch a TV show, there are ads. Sometimes when you flip through a magazine, if any of you still subscribe to magazines, you will see advertisements too. One thing that I don't recommend doing, though, is begging your audience to engage with your sponsored content. You should be aiming to make your sponsored content just as engaging and just as comment-worthy and share-worthy as your organic content. It's not your audience's job to make sure that your content is successful. It's your job. And I know that can be a big turnoff if people say like, oh, this sponsored post that I did just tanked. Like, can you guys go give it some love? Like, that's just icky on both sides of things, and we want to avoid that situation whenever possible. Although one thing to keep in mind, just if you do feel like you put out a sponsored piece of content and it didn't perform as well as your organic content, I just want to say that's actually normal, and I will link an article from Influencer Intelligence that breaks this down further, but on average, sponsored content typically gets lower engagement than organic content. That's kind of just the way that it is, and it's something that brands that you're partnering with should already know and understand. So just to recap here, think about your ratio of sponsored to organic content for each month. You can even go back and look at your last year of posts and say, oh, I did have more posts during November because it was holiday season and I was busier, or I did have fewer sponsored posts in April because that's usually my slowest month of the year. So just having a general understanding of your ratio is really helpful in terms of how many brand partnerships you want to take on at any given time. Also remember to find brands that align well with the content that you're already creating and something you know your audience would enjoy, and make sure that you retain as much creative freedom as possible when you're partnering with these brands. And if you don't mind taking a few moments to do so, please do educate your audience about how influencer marketing works, why you're taking on brand collaborations, and how that helps you invest more time into producing content that your audience followed you for in the first place. Thank you so much for watching. As always, please subscribe if you're not already. I see a lot of people who watch and don't subscribe, so if my channel provides value to you, it takes 1 second and means so much to me. And if you're already starting to think about holiday and Q4, I'm going to share an up next recommendation on the screen that I think you'll love. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you in my next video.